Hey guys, so apparently the last video didn't really like the sound that was trying to go along with it, so we're going to try this again. Sorry about that. Today we're going to be going back over integrated metabolism. We're just going to run through all the different metabolic pathways in a really quick summary, let you know where they are, how they're related and all that, and then we're going to get into the tissues and how different tissues use them, and then we're going to get down into the fed-fast cycle, so nothing too bad today. The major metabolic pathways, hopefully you guys are familiar with these: glycolysis, gluconeogenesis, glycogen metabolism, fatty acid metabolism, citric acid cycle, fatty acid metabolism again, oxidative phosphorylation, amino acid metabolism. Just so you guys remember, glycolysis, the pentose phosphate pathway, and the fatty acid synthesis occur in the cytosol, while the citric acid cycle, oxidative phosphorylation, beta oxidation of fatty acids, and ketone body formation occur in the mitochondrial matrix. And then what occurs between the two are gluconeogenesis and the urea synthesis. If you guys want to review any of these, go look at the lovely video lectures that Dr. Hayden has put together for all the different sections, and hopefully you guys will be caught up on that. This is a great biological rendition of the metabolic summaries. So we know from our diet we can obtain fats, carbohydrates, or proteins. Proteins go into can make amino acids, which go into the amino acid pool. The amino acid pool can go into the gluconeogenesis pathway to make glucose, or it can go into body proteins. Diet can also make fats. Fats here can make glycerols and free fatty acids, which go into the free fatty acid pool. And these can go into fat stores or go into tissue metabolism, which then can also lead to fat stores and all that. And then the main one that we've been looking at is carbohydrate intake, which gives you glucose. Glucose can either go to form fats, or it can go to form stuff in the glucose pool, or it can go into glycogen storage or gluconeogenesis to make more of the glucose pool. That can also go into the free fatty acid pool and all that. So hopefully you guys are familiar with all this. Physiology will focus a lot on these types of relationships and what happens when you stop one from going to the other and how the body will deal with that. But this is biochemistry, so we'll move on. The early products, energy product macromolecules. So the three that we just talked about were carbohydrates, fats and lipids, and proteins. So the storage capabilities of all of those are carbohydrates have limited capacity to be stored. Fats and lipids are able to be stored unlimitedly, and proteins cannot be stored at all. So hopefully from our previous activities you guys are familiar with that. If not, go look at how they're stored, how like fats can be branched and all that, and hopefully it'll start making a little bit more sense. So how do different organs obtain energy? Well, the brain is pretty special in that it prefers to use glucose as its primary fuel, but when it's under duress, when you're starting to starve, it's going to switch over to ketone bodies to be fuel sparing and cut down on the glucose that it's using so the body can still try to function as fully as possible. Muscles are a little different. General skeletal muscles are going to use fatty acids when resting, glucose when exercising, and amino acids when fasting. The heart is a special muscle in its own, that it's unique in that it prefers fatty acids and ketone bodies over glucose. So if you give it a choice, it's going to prefer the ketone bodies or fatty acids, and it doesn't really like dealing with glucose at all. Then we have the kidneys. The kidneys are where prefer glucose and fatty acids as the source of energy. This is where you're going to focus all of that. And then we have the liver. The liver prefers fatty acids and alpha keto acids over glucose and ketone bodies, and the liver is also responsible for producing ketone bodies when we're fasting. Additionally, a side note is that all those metabolic pathways that we looked at earlier, the liver is the only organ that is able to actually go through all of those different types of metabolic pathways, and so it's really a major organ in understanding metabolism. So now we're going to get into the fed-fast cycle. Just so you guys understand what I'm talking about, the fed-fast cycle, the fed state occurs between 0 and 3 hours after a meal, and so this is when we have dietary intake just happening and we'll go over what all these different things mean. But the post-absorptive and short-term fasting occurs within 3 to 18 hours after a meal. This is when we have all of the food that has been in our body. We're not eating anymore. We're not having meals, and so our body's in the post-absorptive phase. Then we're in the fasting state. If we go beyond 18 hours, up to 2 days, and so this is early starvation stages and stuff like that. But then we're going to hit starvation or long-term fasting, and this is actually when we see physiological adaptations to start trying to retain as many nutrients as possible, because our body recognizes that we're not having any nutrient intake from diet or anything like that. So in the fed state, like I said, this is between 0 and 3 hours. So this is when we have high blood glucose levels, and that's because we've just consumed food. And so this whole state is regulated by insulin. So insulin is actually going to help accelerate glycolysis. It leads to fatty acid synthesis and synthesis of proteins. Insulin is also going to act in the liver and skeletal muscles by increasing glycogen storage there. We have carbohydrate reservoirs. These are, we're going to see an increase there, and this is primarily meant to be a source for the central nervous system. The central nervous system we see here at this point, it depends primarily on glucose as its source of energy, and then muscle and adipose tissue convert glucose to glycerol and fatty acids. Then we have the post-absorptive or short-term fasting state. This is mainly focuses on maintaining blood glucose levels using glucagon. So this is the another one of the hormones that y'all should be familiar with. Glucagon mobilizes glycogen storage because there's no intake. We don't have any glucose being brought in from our diet during this stage, and so glucagon is going to be worried about glycogen storage there. We're also going to see glycogenolysis occur, and this is when glycogen and triacylglycerol. We're also going to see glycogen and triacylglycerol synthesis decrease, and gluconeogenesis is going to occur. This is all a way for the body to try to maintain the levels of blood glucose levels, so we're able to function as normally as possible. We're going to see muscle glycogenolysis occur in muscle cells, and so you're going to be seeing a lot of this occur at the skeletal and muscle cells to make sure that they're able to run as efficiently as possible. And at this point, we're preferring glucose use over glucose production, and so we're going to see our glycogen stores diminish. We're also going to, if we look into the next state, which is fasting, this is, if you guys remember, 18 to 48 hours after we've had a meal. We're going to see this is when we start primarily getting energy from breaking down amino acids and proteins. We're going to see glycerol and lactate used in gluconeogenesis. The liver is going to start producing ketone bodies for the brain to use, and fasting state sees a large daily dose of nitrogen in the urine. If you guys remember from our activity on Wednesday, when we have a lot of excess protein or proteins in our blood that we need to excrete, we're going to see a lot more of the urea cycle enzymes induced. And so what that's actually going to lead to is we're going to lose a lot of nitrogen in our urine. So that's just kind of how that plays into the whole thing there. And then finally, we're going to be talking about starvation, and this is long-term fasting. And so this, when we hit this point, so this is after 2 days to several weeks, we start seeing long-term, the body starts actually creating physiological adaptations to store as many nutrients as possible. And so it's trying to minimize the nutrients lost because it doesn't know if there's going to be dietary nutrients coming back in. We see triacylglycerols from adipose tissue will be the primary source of energy, and so adipose triacylglycerols provide fatty acids to the liver for ketone body production. Ketosis occurs when OAA levels are depleted, and we see that because we have no intake of nutrients, we have a depletion of both fats and protein stores. And then after 2 days, the brain, like I said, is going to switch over from using glucose stores to become a more fuel-sparing organ, and it's going to focus on using ketone bodies as its main source of energy. Like I said, all of this is meant to be kind of so this is how everything that we've talked about kind of connects with the body. But if you guys have any questions, always feel free to talk to Dr. Hayden or I. See you guys tomorrow. Sorry.